Alright, I think everyone know by now what we're gonna have on JJK Phantom Parade on global is gonna be very soon the equivalent of what was the JP1 half-year anniversary. And that basically means we're gonna have three brand new limited character in the form of Team Shoko, on the Gojo, and also Team Nanami. And alongside with that, we're also gonna have the rerun of three other limited character, which is gonna be Domain Gojo, Sukuna, and also Zone Yuji. Now, vast majority of us is not gonna have enough cubes to actually summon on them all, especially because this actually came a lot faster than we were expecting. Normally, global should be going double speed in comparison to JP. So, we had their 1 year anniversary in just 6 months. We had their 6 months anniversary in just 3 months. However, this time around, it was actually triple speed because we managed to get the new limited character in the span of just 2 months, when on JP they would have 6 months gap in between them. So we were definitely going a lot faster even than usual, and vast majority of us are just simply not going to have enough resources, especially because they literally timed it right after Team Shoko banner was finishing up. As a result, vast majority of us, probably even some on yellow Shoko, sorry, we were even summoning on yellow Shoko, not realizing that the new limited character was literally just around the corner. So I do feel like they were being a bit evil in terms of timing as well. Now, I can't blame them purely because they are trying to kind of sync up the release of this kind of new characters alongside with the new JJK Hidden Inventory movie. So that's kind of the reason why they were rushing it. But still, I kind of just feel like they could have actually announced it slightly better, maybe like ahead of Yellow Shoko, or maybe actually delay Yellow Shoko to a bit later on, etc. But anyway, that's kind of just my complaint. If we actually take a look at the game itself, we are going to get into a bit of a dilemma where we are going to have 6 limited characters and we don't know who to choose from. And that's kind of why I decided to do a tier list to tell you guys what, in my opinion, should be the priority. And also I'll give a brief description for each of the character so you kind of know that what's the main benefit of summoning for them. Starting off at the top, we have Domain Gojo. I think he's undisputed. He's just literally the best character in the game. He is able to provide one of the highest amount of debuff multiplier, and on the same time, he is also able to stun enemy for a few turns, and that greatly improves your survivability as well. Now, he is a supporter, and therefore he can literally be used in every single team out there. So that's kind of the reason why he's literally just number one, the best character in the game. So he should be everyone's priority if you don't have him already. Now, the second character on the list is going to be Sukuna. Now, Sukuna is a DPS. However, as I've shown many times on my channel, he can work off color, right? I have used him in pretty much all of the monthly illusory tower ever since he came out, and he works totally fine there. So even though he is a blue DPS, he can work in other color stages, and that's what makes him really shine out to other characters, because essentially when you actually use Sukuna, you are improving your team for every single color, rather than some of the other characters later on who you will only be improving the team for that one specific color. So that's kind of what Sukuna is definitely the second spot, in my opinion, the second priority you guys should be going after. Now, the third and fourth, they are going to be very similar in the sense that they're all to do with improving your green team. Now, the main difference between them is that one is a supporter and one is a DPS, and vast majority of the time I always give supporter slight priority than the DPS, because DPS is a lot more likely to be power creep, where supporter normally have a bit more longevity to them. And I think that's even more true in this case, because what we end up having is that the main DPS we're talking about is going to be on the Gojo, and he is definitely a lot better than any other green DPS out there. Like, even though he is a Gojo and therefore you can't actually play him alongside with Domain Gojo, he is still able to outshine than the combo of Domain Gojo plus any other green DPS, and that's kind of just how good he is, to be honest. But the main problem with Ono Gojo is that he is not your traditional nuker in the sense that you are trying to go for nuke in just 5 or 6 or 7 turns. He actually takes a lot of time for him to actually build up his damage, because he essentially need to his skill 3 turn into an ult, and then he actually need to activate his ult as well afterwards, and then you also want to use his skill 2 to give himself, I think, like a Jujutsu core to increase his damage buff, etc. So he is going to take you a long time to actually build up that damage, and whilst he have his own gimmick of surviving because he has a revive, he also have damage immunity from using his skills, etc. Your teammates don't. So as a result, if you actually want to play him alongside with loads of other teammates, you also need need to make sure they also survive. And what's the best way of making sure your team survive, your teammates survive? That would be to bring a healer. And who's the best healer for the mono green team? It's gonna be the Team Shoko that will be coming alongside with him. And that's kind of why I feel like if you actually want to get the most out of Honor Gojo, you almost have to bring Team Shoko alongside with you. Whereas it's not quite the same on the other way around, because I can play Team Shoko without Honor Gojo, and Team Shoko can still provide a lot of useful utility to my other green DPS out there. And especially even if I don't play Honor Gojo, I can easily go into Domain Gojo plus one other green DPS, and my Team Shoko is still able there to actually help the team out. So that's kind of why I do feel like Team Shoko can function without Honor Gojo easily in no matter whatever situation in those kind of mono green team. However, for Honor Gojo to really shine more than what you're capable of doing outside of a Domain Gojo plus one other green DPS situation, you kind of need Team Shoko to there to make sure the rest of your team also survive long enough as well. So that's kind of why I feel like Team Shoko is just going to be a better, well, a higher priority than Honor Gojo, because she can work without him, but he can't necessarily work as effectively without Team Shoko. So that's kind of the reason why I put Shoko ahead of on the Gojo here. Now then the fifth character on this list is going to be Zong Yuji. Now Zong Yuji is a very funny one because he is definitely the best yellow DPS. However, we are also going to get Team Gojo very very soon on standard banner, and Team Gojo is just as good as Zong Yuji if we are just comparing the DPS by themselves. However, one thing makes Zong Yuji really stand out is that Zong Yuji is not Gojo, therefore you can pair up Zong Yuji with Domain Gojo, whereas Team Gojo obviously is a Gojo, and you can't play two characters with the same name. So if you actually talk about from a team composition point of view, Zong Yuji teams are going to perform a lot better than Team Gojo teams. And then the other thing I also really want to point out is that sometimes you're going to get stages who are going to be strong or weak against one type of attack. So for some stages, they just have insane damage immunity against physical attacks or curse technique attacks, etc. And therefore, a lot of time you actually want not just one DPS for each color, but actually one type of DPS for each color. So one melee attacker and one curse technique attack. And for the yellow category, I don't believe there's any other strong yellow melee attacker. Like there's also a hybrid attacker in the form like yellow Nanami, also Mekimura, but if we are talking about actual pure melee attackers, I don't actually think there's a replacement for Zong Yuji. So that's kind of why Zong Yuji is going to have an advantage there as well, because even if you do actually have Team Gojo, you may still want to get an actual physical attacker in the yellow category, and that's going to be Zong Yuji. So that's kind of why Zong Yuji is number 5 in my opinion, because he can still help you out even if you already have a yellow DPS. And then the last one is going to be Red Nanami or Team Nanami. Now he is definitely good. Even though I put him at the bottom of the list, he's definitely still very good. The main problem he has is that one, he only gives buff to red type of damage. So first of all, that already limit where you can actually help play him. And then the second thing is that his damage multiplier falls in the same category as your Domain Gojo. And then vast majority of the time, if you actually bring another buffer or debuffer from a different category, you actually end up going up with a much higher multiplier when you actually pair with Domain Gojo, and everyone should be playing Domain Gojo in a mono red team as well. So that's kind of why even the red enemy is very good, there you can easily replace him with another debuffer from like the curse tech multiplier, or maybe with red Yaga who actually give Jujutsu buff and also physical buff, etc. So that's kind of why red enemy for me is not essential. Now if we're actually talking about mono red team, what does make Nanami stand out is that even though he's doing buff, and vast majority of time when characters do buff, they don't actually attack themselves. However, Nanami actually do. And as a result, you are not only able to grant buff to your whole team, but you are doing a lot of damage at the same time as well. And his damage output is not low. Like he can actually do a decent chunk amount of damage. So you are going to make your mono red team so much easier with the addition of red Nanami. But vast majority of the time, I just don't feel like you need to really go that far, because red team, to be honest, right now is already going to be very strong. Everyone would have access to Toji after he decided to standard banner. And then if we look at the buffers, everyone already have Domain Gojo, everyone already have Red Yaga. You even have the normal SR Red Nanami who can do decent amount of damage as well himself. So I do feel like the incremental value of Team Nanami is just not going to be as high as the other characters that will also be coming at the same time.